For the last couple of years, I'd say 2.5 years, I focused most of my teachings on behavior, ethics, how to treat each other. Not that I've got it all that figured out, but something that I've learned that the Messianic movement could use in the last few years. Really how to treat each other and how to be the family that we are. At a certain point, I had a few people come to me and say, I'm looking for something deeper, looking for more, maybe we want more gematria, more Kabbalistic things, or maybe we want on the sod level. We want something we've never heard before. And these people were saying, hey, look, I've got these tickling ears, and I want this knowledge, this little pearl of something. And I'd like to say that, there are things that I definitely teach, and we teach here at the ministry, that are maybe things you've never heard before, and maybe little pearls of wisdom. But if we were just to only chase pearls of wisdom, we would just be a bunch of Gnostics. And we've done that path, a couple thousand years ago. I'd like to not go down it again. And that essentially is saying that we've reached a certain point of knowledge, and that will bring us a certain point of salvation, enlightenment. There was actually an entire group of people that said we are enlightened, and that is our salvation. Their Latin word that they called themselves was Illuminati, and it's kind of fun. There's a lot of conspiracy theories around that. If anybody's a Sherlock Holmes fan, like myself, you love these fun stories, but that's what it was. They had this, the symbol of the owl, the wise one, and they said, our wisdom, our enlightenment makes us gods here on earth. And so it reminds me of a story. This is actually a true story that I had adapted, and I'm going to tell it real quick. There was once a young man, let's say in his 30s, extremely intelligent. I mean, this guy knew his stuff. He traveled, it was a Jewish man, he traveled all over Russia, and he goes and he stumps philosophers, and he stumps professors, and even rabbis all over Russia. This guy really knew his stuff. I mean, if you were going to debate against him, you knew he was going to win, and he would rub it in your face. You ever played Monopoly with somebody? And, there's always me throwing the board game and saying, fine, Grandma, you win. But then there's always the person, guess whose property you landed on? Or you play the board game, sorry. And someone goes, sorry! And it was just like, that was my childhood. Now this guy rubbed it in your face. He was very arrogant, but very intelligent. So he decides he's going to go to London and become a big, well-known philosopher. Maybe get a lot of followers, make a lot of money. Sounds fun, right? On his way through Western Europe, he finds himself in the middle of a very windy and cold winter. You can barely see in front of him. He pulls over his carriage and he comes across a very humble-looking shtetl, a very humble Jewish town. And he goes and he says, well, I can afford a nice hotel stay, but I'd like to stump the rabbi while I'm here. Another notch in his belt, stroke his ego a little bit, right? So he goes up and he sees this very humble shul. This very, very kind of dingy looking synagogue. So the windows are cracked, and you can picture it, right? All the wood is worn. He comes up and knocks on the door. After a little while, he hears this very slow footsteps creeping up towards the front door, and who opens this door is this very small, very old rabbi, very long, white beard, tangles in it, and moth holes in his clothing, and just very humble-looking rabbi. And he says, my son, what can I do for you? The young man says, well, Rabbi, I'm traveling through town, and I'd like a place to stay if I could. The rabbi goes, of course, who am I to not receive you? So he brings him in, and he serves him some hot soup, some fresh bread, and some fresh hot tea, the best that the synagogue could offer. They start sitting there. The man puts down his expensive luggage and sits down. He's eating the soup, and the rabbi says, well, since you've had your full and you've warmed up, my son, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself? Well, I'm studied in philosophy, the human psyche, even human biology. I've studied business and economics, and I've surpassed many people. I've studied the Talmud, the Kabbalah. I've memorized the Tanakh. I know Jewish history, philosophy. I know gematria like the back of my hand. I've even studied the stars in the heavens, and I can tell you the constellations. And I can even tell you the smallest of the bacteria and the diseases that men have. And I've studied the history of the world. And I've traveled Russia, stumping many rabbis, and I'm going to London to become a great, wise philosopher, to be a wealthy man and have lots of followers. Now I ask you, Rabbi, what question do you have for me? Rabbi takes a sip of his tea, puts his mug down, strokes his beard a few times. A little bit longer than mine, you know.